Thanks for being here.
Likewise, Tom. It's an absolute pleasure.
Are you kidding me?
I wouldn't.
No, how
Never.
could you? Can you tell me the story at the top of the book about you had some sort of vision or image come to your mind?
I always start with an image, or I should say, it always starts as an image, a visitation, if you will, a picture that arises in my mind. And if it has staying power, right, then I go, okay, it's this again. And then I'm being called, lured, you know?
No.
Okay, I'm going to tell you then. I'll tell you more.
Okay.
I'm being called to investigate that image. And in this case, it was the image of a young person. Gender could be any gender.
Yeah.
And they're looking off into the distance. I know that they're looking at an endless moorland, boggy expanse, which is something, even saying those words enlivens me. I find it as a deeply stimulating and inspiring landscape. And I didn't really even know why. I know that I was always drawn to that kind of landscape. When I was a little kid and kids could wander, and I did, I would always end up going out somewhere, and if I could find wetlands, that's where I was, just to dare myself to go one more foot and one more foot, and are you sinking now? And what'll happen if there's quicksand? And he always come home with a soaker and burrs, and there is something about knowing that there's millions. It's like, you remember the beginning of Dragnet, there's a million stories in the naked city.
You help me understand the vision thing, though. Is this the kind of thing? Are you in your car driving and it pops into? Are you asleep? Are you like McCartney dreaming yesterday? Are you? What are you? Where does this come from?
I'm probably in a quiet place where I like to read, and I'm relatively still.
Yeah.
And I have the solitude necessary to follow that picture. And I remember the first words that came to me when I was looking at that landscape that appeared in my mind's eye through the eye of this young person of indeterminate or undefinable gender.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, the land looks like the surface of the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
Like our ocean. More of a northern ocean. It looks like the swell of an ocean that has been stilled with the wand of a sorcerer. Where lines are blurred, there is creativity and there's hope.
How do you go from that, having this image, having this sort of like internal investigation of the meaning of the wetlands, to a 720 what? 21?
21.
721 page Victorian novel.
So I'm in the late 19th century. There's a young protagonist. There's a mysterious moorland. There is, oh, wait a second. What's that I spy on the horizon? Is that a crumbling mansion? Yes, it is. What's it made of? Who lives there? What are the secrets? And of course, Victorian literature there's always a quest for identity. If there's a mansion, it's crumbling, and it does house secrets, and there will be a quest. And I love these traditional readerly delights when I encounter them, such that, oh, the portrait on the stairs of the dead mother and the dead baby brother. Of course there's a portrait dominating the landing of the marble stairs. You know, these are tropes.
Yeah.
And I find them, for me, they're delightful as a reader. And I go, I can use all those familiar tropes and narrative devices to lead the reader on an immersive journey, which actually is grappling with some pretty contemporary questions about sexuality, gender, identity, the urgency of the earth. Can we listen, please, to what the earth is telling us?
I've also heard you say something along the lines of, and I don't mean to misquote you here, that while we refer to questions around sexuality and gender as contemporary ones, that if we actually do real research, we see that these conversations were happening. You're smiling at me.
Yeah.
These conversations were happening in the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries.
Huge. In fact, they become really urgent in the late 19th century because the Victorian era is an era that is obsessed with taxonomy and defining, categorizing species, class, sex, gender. It becomes a time of really rigorously enforced gender norms and sex roles.
So that is interesting to you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
To know that these conversations, we frame them as something that's been happening in the last 40, 50 years.
Oh, God, no. It's all extremely urgent then as well, but heavily enforced. It's really locked down. You will go to jail if you are caught cross-dressing, quote unquote.
Right. So what is fascinating? What is interesting to you about that?
Well, the era that we're living in now, our own contemporary modern era, is all being percolated back then. You know, what is going to blossom in science and art and what's going to detonate in terms of violence and global conflict, it's all happening then. And, you know, Einstein has yet to publish, same with Freud, but all of these movements are gaining traction right there.
If I'm not mistaken, what you're saying is that like we tend to think about our present moment as being informed by a very short history, essentially like our grandparents, maybe our great-grandparents. That the things that led to that the world we live in right now of some level of unrest, we might be able to say, oh, well, that comes from the Vietnam War, and we might now want to look back at, oh, actually, there were anti-war sentiments happening within the Civil War, you know, and that like if you go back and forth, that these things were. So what you're saying is what you're interested in doing is looking back not just at the brief history, but at the long, long history that leads to these moments that we're in right now.
Absolutely. The antecedents, the seeds. Yes, that fascinating. Thank you. You said it way better than I could have. That's why I make up stories. I can't actually talk about this stuff.
No, you're doing great.
I can only make up stories about it.
And I can tour with you whenever you want. I'm very reasonable.
Honestly, God, that would be great.
I'm very reasonable. I'll do it. I'm a reasonable fee. Just ask the CBC. Tell me a little bit about your protagonist.
When we meet her, Charlotte Bell.
Yeah.
The Honorable Charlotte Bell is on the verge of celebrating her 12th birthday. She has grown up within the confines, but can we even call them confines? Because it's a 12,000-acre estate of moorland, and she is free to wander. There's an old man of all work called Byrne, and he has taught her to safely traverse the moor and to know the difference between solid ground and a depthless pool that might be covered with the merest mantle of green. You know, the greenest ground may prove the most treacherous, you know, because you could sink without a trace. But that said, she's free to roam, and she knows all the creatures and loves this land. But beyond its borders, she must not stray, because she has been raised with the knowledge that she has a condition which renders her susceptible to germs being brought in from the outside and by outside people. So her acquaintance is limited to this sort of skeleton staff in the house and her beloved father. But on the occasion of her 12th birthday, he does something extraordinary. He obtains for her a tutor, a 19-year-old young man who's shocked to find that his new pupil is in fact a girl, which is bordering on scandalous. It's just not done. Mm-hmm. So her world begins to enlarge as her father says, well, it looks as though you may be outgrowing your condition. Mm-hmm. And she's a brilliant mind. She has audiographic and photographic memory. Yeah. She actually has to learn to have a sense of humor. She will eventually get a girlfriend as well who just thinks she's a bit bizarre and doesn't get jokes. So she has to learn to get jokes. And so her world opens up bit by bit by bit. And she, beyond everything in the world, wishes to go to school and then travel the world. She doesn't understand that there are certain strictures that await her, associated with being female, of course. She's going to have to learn to be a lady, and there are aspects of her condition which are going to be brought to bear against her.
There's a no spoiler. I'm trying to do.
But you know what? Here. I don't consider her condition to be a spoiler, because it's a fact of her body that she has been born with what is now in many quarters referred to as an intersex trait.
Right.
And she has a normal body. Mm-hmm. It has a variation. Mm-hmm. She has a genital variation, mm-hmm. which is a normal variation, but mm-hmm. which in our own day is still treated and pathologized, and often, quote unquote, surgically corrected, which, and there are activists now, and I stand with them, who are trying to make this against the law.
Mm-hmm. That form of mutilation?
Yes, it's mutilation, plain and simple, however well-intentioned.
What brought her to your mind, do you think?
She's been coming to me probably my whole life. There's a kid energy that runs through this book, even though, we go back and we explore the romance between her parents and there's buckets and buckets of plot, right, and mystery.
Yeah.
And what drives it and enlivens it is this kid with her kid-like energy and her curiosity and her incredible optimism, and ultimately her innocence when she comes up against what she thinks is going to be opportunity, as in fact it's a scalpel that's going to be wielded against her to make her, quote unquote, normal and marriageable. And you know, as a queer person, as a lesbian, for me, it's not difficult for me. It's a short walk between me and my own, I won't mince words, my own traumatic experience with coming out and trying to be in this world that needed very, very, very badly to change me, if not mutilate me, into being normal. And it still is happening. And sure, there's a lot that's different and there's a lot that's way better now, but it still ain't no picnic.
No.
If you don't fit the mold.
It's a short walk between what we're talking about with Charlotte in this book and what Charlotte's going through here, and the lack of acceptance and the systemic and quite physical actual changing that they want to do to her.
Yes.
And your own experience that you were able to put yourself in that experience a little time.
Absolutely, because who gets to say what is normal?
Yeah.
Who gets to say who is well and who is not?
Yeah.
And certainly, we need look no further than the history of women in medicine, not as medical practitioners, but as subjects of medicine. In the late 19th century is a wealth of information. I did many deep dives and spent a lot of time researching. I quip that I am qualified to be a late 19th century freelance gynecologist. I mean, when I went to original sources, it was too fascinating. But of course, just being born female you're already pathologized. Mm-hmm. Your body is already an unreliable locus of disease and madness, and it all centers around your uterus. And you know what? Don't be reading a 721-page book, never mind trying to write one, because all the blood that should be feeding your uterus is now gone to your brain. It's going to cause you to fall over and have a fit. It's going to disqualify you from your chief purpose, which is to bear healthy offspring for the empire.
Right.
Yeah.
But you seem to be compelled by something more than just accuracy. You say you find queer liberation movements in the 17th, 18th, and 19th century. That doesn't feel like accuracy to me. It feels like comfort. It feels like it gives you something.
It gives me solace. It makes me know that there's always a continuum. We have more connecting us than dividing us, and we need to know our history.
Yeah.
And you know, when you're cut off from your history, you're cut off from yourself and your allies, and your sense that I am well. There is meaning. It's not just me. There are others. It's just Charlotte toward the end of the book, and she's with Mr. Baxter, who is revealed to be gay ultimately, or a Uranian, as he puts it in his parlance.
Yeah.
She looks around, going, now I realize that there were more like us, perhaps even in this train car. Yeah. And in that village, whizzing past the train windows, you know, she has this lovely awakening to this idea that, and if we were, you know, maybe we were in hiding, and wouldn't it be wonderful if we didn't have to, you know? So that's her big, big, big journey. But, you know, I do find solace, and I was drawn certainly by the history of wellness and madness, particularly as pertains to women and anybody who does not fit the gender norm.
Yeah.
Knowing that normalcy is pathologized according to the prevailing powers that be. And I know that I have my own personal experience of that. And I use everything. I am a lens, I am a filter for stories.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that I've specifically lived everything that I write about. Far from it. I wouldn't be here to tell the tale.
Yeah. I want to talk about Fall on Your Knees for a little while. So I just want to let people know what we're talking about here. So Fall on Your Knees comes out in 1996. Sweeping story about four sisters from a Cape Breton family in the first half of the 20th century. The book is a massive hit. The hardcover spends 57 weeks on the Globe and Mail bestseller list. I want to say that again. The hardcover on the Globe and Mail bestseller list for 57 weeks. Newspapers run adjectives like stunning, brilliant, beautiful, magnetic. It becomes an Oprah's book club pick, which is, we'll get to that in a second. But before all this happens, you're someone who's never written a novel before, if I'm not mistaken. You are sitting there cranking out what's going to end up being the 600-page blockbuster. At any point, do you have any idea that this might happen. Like, I've talked to songwriters who've been willing to admit to me that when they were in the middle of writing like Stairway to Heaven, they go like, yeah, I kind of knew it was going to do something. Any idea?
It's not like I expected, the book to be an Oprah pick. I'm not expecting that. That's not what I'm saying. But I write with the expectation, whether it's a play or a book, I write with the expectation that I'm going to give it to people and they're going to enjoy it and they're going to want to give it to their friends. I mean, I know that that's not cool of me, but it really is why I do it. I do it for the audience and for the readers because I identify with them and I go, I want to write a book that I would like to read. I want to write a show that I would like to see. You're supposed to be cool and not care, and you're supposed to do your art in a I don't believe that. I think that it's for other people. I also just feel like I can be very uncompromising about my vision and what I think is very important to say in this world, and that it always can come through a story that will have an invitation in it, and it's always welcoming, such that people who might not want to spend any time with a queer love story, the way that, Fall on Your Knees has, and just about everything else that I've written has,
and
right?
Fayne as well.
And this is like years ago I'm doing this when it's anathema to do that. I go,
Anathema to have
to think that anything with queer content is going to become that popular.
Right.
It's like, what do you think you're doing? Like, that's ridiculous. Don't do that.
Good point. There hadn't been these big, massive queer novels at this point.
No, not at all. So that's why I'm saying that I want to invite people who might, if I asked them, would you like to lose yourself in a 500-plus page queer novel? They would go, no.
Yeah.
But I invite them into the story.
Yeah.
And before they know it, they are with that story. They are with those people. They can close it at any time. But a lot of people came on that journey. A lot of people who never dreamed that they could identify beyond what might even be prejudices. But I also believe that people are always more ready to join and to open and to listen and to identify and to ally themselves with people whose experience might be very different from their own.
Level with me here.
Yeah.
What does the Oprah's book club thing really do? I've always been very curious about that.
Oh, well, you know what? It's like she presses a button and you sell about 1 million books in the United States of America.
Seriously?
Yeah. When you haven't been anywhere before, they don't care.
Your life changes kind of?
Yeah, your life changes. You pay your mortgage. Done.
Wow.
Yep.
What was that?
That's
is that a phone call?
Yep.
Oprah?
Yep.
Calls?
Yep.
No.
Her producer calls.
Yeah.
And you think it's a joke.
Yeah.
And I remember asking her staff there, her team in the studio, anyone from like a production assistant to a makeup artist, they loved her as a boss. Mm-hmm. And they told a story about how they all went to New York to do a show where Oprah and Martha Stewart did a show together. And they said that they were really glad they were working for Oprah and not the other extraordinarily powerful woman.
Right. Is it overwhelming at all?
It was overwhelming. I mean, because I'm a high-functioning person, I can stay calm and lucid and rational when the most extraordinary things are happening, which means that there's a delay. So, it was only like way after the whole Oprah experience that I felt like I had just very nearly been hit by a really shiny red sports car. And that's the encounter with American fame and wealth.
What does that look like?
Right. Whoa, that just about killed me.
So you're taken aback a little bit.
It's just like, whoa. Wow. That's a lot of power. And to be in the presence, it's like, being next to a nuclear reactor. Yeah. That's the American fame machine, which is juxtaposed with, it's just friendly and normal. And you go, yes, you're friendly. This is not normal. Yeah. This is American-sized fame and celebrity. And it is... I think it's...
not for you.
Well, it was a nice place to visit.
Yeah, you're right about that. I understand. The two-part stage adaptation of Fall on Your Knees is coming out early next year, playing in 4 different Canadian cities, which is interesting because I heard that's supposed to be a play first.
Exactly. It started as a play, and then the stage directions got out of hand, right? The stage directions were too long. And then I realized I was writing a piece of prose fiction, and that was disconcerting because I didn't know how to do that.
And does it feel like it's going home to its original home?
In a way, absolutely, because this book, of course, began with images as well. It was the images of the 3 sisters appearing as though in stained glass in a Catholic church. or a cathedral,
Yeah.
each holding an emblem of their martyrdom. This is before I knew who they were or where they were. You know, when saints they have the emblem of their martyrdom. In one case, it's like this red high heel shoe. In another case, it's like this severed braid.
Yeah, St.
In another case, it's
Valentine, I
like-
remember seeing the arrow in his hand. or
There,
something like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's exactly that, right? Or St. Lucy with a plate and her eyeballs are on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a picture book of the saints that had all those things in it. Did you have that one?
I sure did. I
Yeah.
see we were seared similarly.
Yeah, I can see that too. Just horror. And those are. I remember Joan of Arc was a saint in the book
Yeah.
I had. Saint
Yeah.
Joan.
Yeah, me too. She's in the flames.
She's in the flames with her hands tied behind her back. Yeah.
We had the same book.
I 100% the same.
Oh
book.
my God!
Yeah,
Yeah, her
100%
dance and
the same
her
book.
head thrown back, kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
ecstatic
Yeah,
and
the flames
suffering.
gathering around her and
Yeah,
all
man.
that, and the soldiers next to her. And I didn't even notice Joan of Arc was a saint. Saint Joan.
Yeah, so one sister has a crutch, an old-fashioned crutch, right,
Uh-huh.
of the kind that are hung up at the Oratory in Montreal to this day,
Yeah.
and at shrines around the world. For example, Lourdes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it was a play, and I got a B grant. There was such a thing as it was called a B grant from the Canada Council, and to actually fund the writing of a first draft of a play, and then eventually I had to write and say thank you. I used the money to write, but it turned out to be a book. Oh, that's okay.
So tell me who's doing this new adaptation?
Well, it's Elisa Palmer,
Who
my
is
wife.
Your wife.
Elisa Palmer is a theater director. Well, she directed my play at Stratford
Yeah.
recently, Hamlet 911. And she is the co-creator and director of the stage show Fall on Your Knees. She's also the artistic director of National Theatre School, which is my alma mater, which, of course, I graduated in 1980. And if you told me then you're going to be eventually married to the artistic director of this school, I'd say, but I think I'm gay. How's that going to work? Yeah.
How is it seeing this work that is one of the defining works of your career through the eyes of a person you love very much?
Well, it's brilliant because she's a brilliant director, and the playwright who's written the script, Hannah Moskowitz, is a brilliant writer. So they have teamed up, and they've done the thing that I've always said. If it's going to be a piece of theater, it has to die to one medium and be reborn in the other. It has to die to literature, die to the book, and be reborn as theater. And it's got to be itself. And stuff that words on the page actually have to become movement. They have to become sound. They have to become song. It's a movement and music-driven, highly narrative piece of theater that I'm very excited about because I've seen workshops and it's like kind of spine-tingling. I've just been in awe of the grit and tenacity and vision that it's taken to shepherd and make this project happen over the course of like more than 10 years of commitment, because that's what it takes. It's going to look easy. It's going to look easy.
I think it's a beautiful answer, because the fact that you didn't think about it means that it's just there. It's just there.
Oh, it's there. It's an it. And I think it's also because Lisa and I have collaborated so often on theater that it's not like, oh, gee, I wonder if she's a good enough artist for this, or does she have the chops for this? Like that has never been the doubt. The doubt is like, are other people going to get convinced to come on board and just know what she knows and what I know and what the playwright, what Hannah knows?
No, and I should be clear. I wasn't saying that we were implying that she wasn't good enough. It was
more
like you are giving the first impression of your work to somebody else.
Yeah, you're right?
Maybe I shouldn't do it.
No. But no, you're absolutely right. It's an enormity that I take for granted.
Yeah,
because
totally.
I think it's because it's just one of the risks that is normal when, as you know, your life, your professional and personal life is about being creative, creating things. That's already really risky. So to say, hey, I'm lobbing this over to you, catch, make something amazing. Oh yeah, of course you will. Maybe I can help. I don't know, or you don't even need my help. But yeah, you and the other collaborators, this is going to be great. So we just take the egg and we say, hey, catch.
Yeah, that's lovely. What was the thing you said to me earlier? You said, I never thought years ago I would have been married to the head of the National Theatre School because, hey, I'm gay. Yeah. It implies to me a change has happened over the years. We can say that for sure. As someone who has had a life in Canadian theatre. I don't get to ask this question very much. What have you know? How has Canadian theatre changed in general over the years? In a good way? You know?
There are changes. There are good changes. Not enough. But, a lot. A lot has shifted. In 1980, I graduated from National Theatre School, and it was a very different world. And Rena Fraticelli published the report on the status of women in Canadian theatre. It was commissioned by the government. And boy, was it dismal. And it was galvanizing reading because women were nowhere, never mind queer people. Like, whoa. And, Sky Gilbert was just starting Buddies in Bad Times Theater. My friends had just started Nightwood Theater. There was a lot of work to do. And it was a very exciting, heady, pioneering time. I did so much theater which was nonlinear, cutting edge, and always secretly knowing my dirty little secret is that I'm exceedingly narrative. I'm very linear I like a beginning, middle, and an end. But yes, I'll be in this weird piece of theater and I'm having the time of my life.
You're a little more old-fashioned.
I am old-fashioned.
Yeah.
I am old-fashioned, but I came of age in a very new-fashioned world.
Right.
And where I also came of age politically as a feminist and as a queer person. And knowing that was just part and parcel of myself as an artist and that they were indivisible. There was no separating those things out.
But you say Canadian theatre changed a lot, still a lot of work left to do.
Loads, yeah.
What keeps you creating?
Just the enjoyment of stories.
Really?
Yeah, the enjoyment of going, oh, there's an idea. What if I follow that character onto that landscape or into that neighborhood? Where are they going to take me? What am I going to find out? Also, I just love mystery. I love story. It's always as much of a mystery to me when I begin. I don't begin knowing the ending. I have to write my way through.
You're kidding me.
Oh, no, I never know. I never know where this is going.
There's no outline with this thing?
No, and that's a crazy way to work. It's a really hard way to work. I work that way so that I'll feel like it's real deal.
You are writing these stories. You are getting to know these characters like I am as I read it.
Yeah, and as soon as I find out something about the narrative, then I'm going right back to the beginning, and I'm having to set it all up over and over and over again so that you won't notice anything but that you're having an immersive experience in a whole nother world that nobody created but that you're just in. That's my goal.
That's a beautiful, beautiful goal, and I think well accomplished. Nice to talk to you.
Likewise, Tom. Thank you.